Here I've got a calendar for the whole year of 2018. It's made completely by JavaScript. I want to show you the folder that I've got on my desktop. It's called JS underscore create underscore year underscore calendar underscore for underscore bill. So it's short for JavaScript create year calendar for bills. In this folder, I only have three things. I have an HTML file to create the web page, and it's named JavaScript array to HTML table.html. I've got a little note.txt file, and I've got a tiny fw.bmp file. Okay, let's look at the note.txt file. In this project, I have done a few rules here. I'm going to create 10 items per month, and the 10 items are rent, and it's going to be red, AEP, that's for our electric, it's going to be blue, and payday is going to have black font with a green background. And we have 2 paydays a month because both of us get paid bi-weekly, so you have X2 here for times 2. We also pay our car lease every payday, so twice a month we pay our car lease. That's also going to have black font with a green background because it's going to be in the same day of the month. We will have another bill called repair. It's going to have a color of brown. Another bill called Netflix with a color of orange. Short for insurance, insure, which will be magenta, and phones, which will be green. Here's a special rule that I want to address. Any bill that falls on a payday will have the payday's black and green color. So, for instance, rent, well, rent's not going to fall on a payday. When is the payday ever going to be the first? It's not. But any of these other bills, let's say the repair bill, if it happens to fall on a payday, instead of it having a text of brown, its text it's going to be in the same day of payday, and it's going to have black text with a green background. Again, this is talking about something that is on payday and a bill on the same day. Any bill that falls on a payday means that I need a special rule regarding this. So the date will be commented out in both the payday rule and in the bill rule, and a separate special rule will apply to this particular combo. And you may not understand what I'm talking about now, but once I get through this video, you will understand. Alright, so every month we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things that we want to address. Let's get out of that note to self. This tiny fw.bitmap is this image right here, which I use. If I open up the page, you can see that it's being used up here. It's also being used in the tab of the browser, but it's very difficult to see because it's so small. Let me slide this over here. I also changed it was originally an ICO file, but I changed it to a bitmap file so I could open it up in Microsoft Office Picture Manager. And by doing that, when I refreshed this, my path is wrong because the code before I brightened up this photo, it was, in my opinion, too dark. It was an ICO file. It was too dark in here. I changed the extension to a bitmap, a BMP, so that I could open up in Microsoft Office Picture Manager so that I could edit it by hitting this Edit Pictures and using the brightness and contrast. And it brightened it up. Now that I've brightened it up and I named it tinyfw.bmp instead of tinyfw.ico, I have to change that in my code. So right here you see the original link that pointed to that ICO. Let's change that to BMP and see if that is going to work now or not. Actually, it brightened it up here. You still can't really tell what it is because it's so tiny, but it did brighten it up here. But I've got another place that I need to change it from ICO to bitmap, and that would be in my style. I have a class called BGImage, short for background image, in which I am pointing to that image. And again, it was originally tinyfw.ico, now .bmp. Now let's see if that brightened up the image and see if it comes back in all of these rectangles. And it did. Alright, so that's brighter. You can see the facial features a little bit better. When I stretch my window here, I am maintaining the aspect ratio of the image. What I haven't been able to do yet is force this image to be center aligned inside of this text area. It stays locked to the left. So that's a work in progress. That's an improvement that I want to make. I could have had the image stretch as the text area stretches, but then the aspect ratio looks really strange because it's only this high ever, and then when it gets wide, your image gets really short and squatty and strange. So I didn't want to mess that up. But having it centered would be nicer than floating to the left like that. Okay, let's see. So I showed you the three things that are inside of my folder. The HTML file, this little text file that basically is just some notes to myself that has nothing to do with the file's execution, and then this tiny bitmap file that I use for image purposes. So we close out of this. Let's slide this over here, and now we have the code next to the web page output. Might as well start at the top. On line 1, we've got our doc type declaration, our opening HTML tag, our opening head tag, and between the title tags we have January JS array to HTML table, and that is shown right up here in the browser's tab. Next, we've got the link here that points to that image. Link rel equals shortcut icon, type equals image / x icon, href equals tinyfw.bitmap. And that's giving me my little image up here in the browser tab right next to the title in the browser tab. The next thing we have here, link rel equals style sheet, type equals text / css, href equals style.css. I do not have an external style sheet yet. I have my styles down here starting on line 13 inside of style tags. Eventually I will cut all of this out and I will open up a new tab right here, and I will have an external style sheet, and I will name it style.css. At that point, this line of code will point to the external style sheet, and I can take everything that's inside here from line 13 to line 50 and cut it out of the HTML file to make the HTML file itself smaller. That is something I will do at the end of this video. I will do the same thing with my JavaScript. This is going to point to an external JavaScript. Currently, I have my JavaScript inside the HTML file inside of script tags, and that goes from line 52, and it's most of the code that's in this file. It goes all the way to line 485. All of that will be cut and paste into a separate file here, and then we'll just point to it, which will make eventually our HTML file will be exceptionally small. But for the purposes of this video, I'm keeping it in here until the end. This will at that point to something called action.js. Alright, now let's go ahead and check out the styles inside of the style tags. For the body and the HTML, we have margin set to 0 pixels auto and padding set to 0 pixels. For the table element, we have border set to 4 pixels dashed black and background color gray. And if you look over here, you can see the dashed black line that butts up against the top, bottom, left, and right of the window. You can't see the bottom until I scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. But down here you can see the dashed line. Okay, so that was two styles for the table element. Two styles for the TD, which stands for the table data cell. Border is set to 4 pixels, ridge navy, and padding is set to 5 pixels. It doesn't look like a navy blue, but this is what the output looks like when I use navy. If I were to just put blue, it's much brighter blue, and maybe that looks better. Maybe I should just leave it the brighter blue. I don't know. I thought maybe it looked a little too bright. Sometimes I use colors that are really bright to see color differentiation for the purposes of going, oh yeah, that's the element that I want to change, or I like to see the contrast, but I'm kind of trying to go a little more neutral now. Not as crazy looking, a little more subtle. So I think I'll go back with the navy. That's less of a eye bleed, if you know what I mean. Alright, so next we will look at the styles for the text area. We have the resize set to none, the width set to 99%, and the height set to 100%. And the text area is all the white squares that you see that we can type inside of. Currently, I don't have local storage set in my code, so the only thing we're doing with these text areas right now is establishing when a bill is due and sticking it into that particular day of the month. And we're doing it over and over again for the entire year. We're using for loops, taking advantage of for loops and arrays to do this. Then I created a class called BGImage, and it's represented by the dot. So for class BGImage we have, and there's some things that are commented out. Actually, this statement is commented out, this statement is commented out, and this long statement is commented out, because I was experimenting with styles trying to get this background image to do what I wanted it to do. Right now I like that it's staying, it's keeping its aspect ratio as I make my window wider, but in my final design I want this background color of these text areas to be this very same or similar color to this gray that's included in the image, and then I want this image to float in the center so that it just looks like the head stays the same size but actually stays in the center while this page stretches instead of hugging the left. I just haven't got that yet. But that's what some of these things were, me practicing with the background image in that text area. The two lines that are working, however, is this first line, background : URL parentheses tinyfw.bmp, and background size set to contain. So the background is set to URL tinyfw.bitmap, and the background size is set to contain. When I set background size to 100%, I'll show you what happens to my background image. I took the comment lines off. Now let's refresh the page. It made it a little wider if you paid attention, but when I stretch this whole thing, my aspect ratio looks awful, right? I mean, it's even a little bit blurred as well. It fits the text area nicely, but it makes the image squatty, and I don't want that. So I commented it out. I'm sorry, this is running. Background repeat is set to no repeat. I'll move that up here with the other lines that are actually executing as well. And then I'll keep these 3 lines that I've commented out for future experimenting purposes. Yeah, text align did not work. Setting just the height to 100% didn't work, and the background size to 100% didn't work. I also tried the background size to just a single 100%. That didn't work either. Now, if I comment out the background repeat, and if I set that to no, if I comment this out instead of setting it to no repeat, what happens now is as I stretch this out, we get multiples. So we don't lose the aspect ratio, we just get more of the image, which, I don't know, that's kind of creepy, but maybe I can leave that. Maybe I can just get more heads. So, anyway, that's an option for you to play with. I just wanted to show you a few options that you could experiment with it with your styles. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep I'm gonna keep that set background repeat set to no repeat, so it's just a single image. See, I just need to change that color so that it matches this other gray, and hopefully get it to center. All right, let's talk too long on that one. I have a class green here that has background color set to green, and I really don't think I'm using this. So once I go over this code, if I see I'm not using, if I don't have a class green, I'll just take this out of my code completely. There's the ending style tag. Now, what I told you is I can take this out of this HTML file and put it in an external one, and I will need to name it style.css and have it right in the folder next to the HTML file that we're working with now. So let's go on ahead and do this. Let's double click in Notepad++ in an empty area up here so it creates a new tab. File, Save As, and it goes right into my folder. I want it in the folder that I'm working in. I'm going to call it style.css. Save it. So now we've created it. So now go in here. Go and grab the style, the opening style tag, all the way down to the closing style tag. Right click it, cut it right out, and then right click and paste it right in my style.css. Now because this is an external style sheet, get rid of those style tags. Here's the opening style tag, highlight it and back out so that it gets deleted, and then the closing style tag, highlighted it and back out of there. Okay, now refresh your page and see that everything is still working. Well, you can't see that everything is still working until you have your own code to check, but it's still working. All right, now let's look at the JavaScript, everything inside of the script tags. Again, after I go over all of this, I'm going to do the same thing by creating action.js, and I'm going to cut all of the script out, just like I did when I created style.cs. I'm going to create action.js, and then this will point to that external. But for now, let's just look at the JavaScript first. All right, I have one single function, and I called it dozer. So function dozer, empty parentheses, opening curly brace. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create some variables. All at once, we can create as many variables as we want by using the var keyword once, and then separate each individual variable with a comma. So we're going to create a variable called r, which is short for array, because we're going to create an array. And because we're creating all of the elements with JavaScript, we have to have variables that represent the body, represent table, so we're using tab, short for table, represent the table row, represent the table data cell, represent the text area, represent a text area ID, a text node, a row, a column, and a variable that holds a message. Well, the next thing we do after we create these variables is we're going to create a very large array. And I'm sure there's a better way to do this, a more simplified version, maybe using a for loop, maybe with some if conditions, but this is the long way to create this array. We're going to name it ARR, short for array. We're setting it equal to, And then the entire array is going to be enclosed by a straight bracket. There's the opening straight bracket, which starts on line 21, and we'll go down to the closing straight bracket on line 76. Closing straight bracket and the ending semicolon. Everything inside of those straight brackets is a row. So the first row is also going to be enclosed in straight brackets, another set of straight brackets, and then a comma is going to follow it. That's the first row. This is the second row. This is the third row until we do 54 rows. This first row has the shortened version of our days of the week. So for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we use 3 characters to represent the days of the week. And you can see them right here, up here in the table. So we're going to do that until we get all the way to the end of the year. Oh, I went too far. The end of the year. I went way too far. Right here. This is the last row. And if I scroll down this page, you can see December 30th is right here, blah. December 31st, blah. And then after December 31st, we have table data cells that have text areas inside that have nothing to do with the year 2018. All of these belong to 2019. I don't care about 2019, so I've given them a value of 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have zeros, just so that our table is perfect with the same amount of rows and columns across. Well, not the same amount of rows as columns, but you know what I mean. It's not a jagged calendar. It's a uniform calendar. Okay, then we close up the outermost straight bracket, and again close it, finish it off with the semicolon. So there's our year, an array to represent the entire year. The next thing we're going to do is we have body equals a single equal sign, or it's an assignment statement. Body equals document.getElements by tag name, and in parentheses and single quotes body, and then index 0. Index because it's in between the straight brackets. The next line of code we after that is tab equals, again tab is not a tab, it's short for table, document.createElement, parentheses single quotes table. So we're going to create the table element on this side of the equals, and we're going to assign it to the variable called tab. Here on the right hand side of the equals, we're using document.getElements by tag name, and in parentheses double quotes body, and we only have one body, so body index 0 means the first body, which is the only body, and that's going to be set to the variable with a like name body. Alright, so here's our body, here's our table that JavaScript is creating. Then we have 2 for loops, a for loop nested inside a for loop. The first for loop, for, and in parentheses row equals 0, semicolon, row less than r.length, r being the name of the array. And then lastly you have row plus plus. So we're going to get this increment for as many rows as we need. It's just going to keep making rows for every element here that we listed, for everything, for every array item. These are all array items, these rows. This for loop is going to do some stuff for each one. What stuff is it going to do? Well, for every row that we're creating, it's going to do what's inside of these curly braces. And that starts on this line right here at line 83. And it's going to do all of this. It's going to do a ton of stuff. Now, where's the end of it? Where is the end of the... There it is, all the way to line 376. This is the end of the outer for. This is the end of the inner for. We haven't discussed the inner for yet. We are just getting started with the for loop. All right, the outer for loop. I'm sorry, that's the inner for loop. The outer for loop. The first thing it does is this. On the right-hand side of the equal, we have document.createElement, parentheses and quotes tr. We're going to create a table row. We're going to create a table row. JavaScript is going to create a table row, and it's going to use this tr variable to represent it so that we can manipulate it. So this for loop is going to handle the table rows. After that, we have an inner for loop that's going to handle the columns. So here in the parentheses, we have call equals 0, semicolon, call less than, again, this is the name of the array that we created way up here, ARR, index row, because each row is a new index. When we start up here, the very first one for the table, this first row is index 0, the second row is index 1, index 2, all the way down, and so on and so forth. So for every row, we're going to set up a column as well. And the first, let's see, I said call equals 0, call less than r, index row dot length, semicolon, and then call plus plus means each time we go through this loop, we're going to increment call by 1. So it's going to go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3, all the way until we do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. All right, so what are we going to do? What looping action are we going to do for this for loop? Well, the first statement we have is on the right-hand side of the assignment equals. We have document.createElement. Now, what kind of element are we going to create? We're going to create the table data cell. Up here for the outer for loop, we created the table row. For the inner loop, we're creating the table data cell. So up here, this first row that has all the heads in the background, this is a row. The inner for creates each table data cell that also holds a text area which holds an image. Okay. After this line of code, when we create our table data cell, we are now going to create our text area. So on the right-hand side of the equals, we have document.createElement. What are we going to create now? We're going to create a text area. So up here we've created the table row, then we created the table data cell, and in each table data cell we want to have a text area. So document.createElement, parentheses and quotes text area, and we're setting it equal, we're assigning it to the variable called TXA for short. TXA short for text area. So every time we want to manipulate a specific text area, we're going to use the variable TXA. We're going to use txa.id or txa.value, and we're going to manipulate what's inside. Like here you see rent, we've manipulated this particular text area by putting something in it. And we put something in this one, we put something in this one, we got something in here, and so on and so forth. Okay. Here I've got a note to myself, show ID while looping. A lot of times I had to do some practice lines of code so that I can see how this was working. As I would put another line of code in, I would want to see some output to prove something to myself. So what I did was I have this line of code that is taking the name of the array, which is ARR, the first index that represents the row, the second index which represents the column. So this right here picks a specific text area, okay? And then I am setting it equal, I'm assigning it to txa.id. So what I'm doing is, based on which text area I'm talking about, I want to give it an ID that matches it. So my test was an alert, okay? So this is how I tested what the value of txa.id was. I wanted to make sure this is what I thought it was. So I use my alert keyword so that I get an alert pop-up. And in the parentheses, I have that txa.id. So now I'm going to get to see what the value of txa.id is. It's my practice. The value of txa.id plus we're going to concatenate the string, the literal string. Can I see some ID, please? So let me refresh this and run the page. So we start off, the very first thing in our array called ARR says, son, can I see some ID, please? We click it. Now we're going to see the next iteration of the loop. Mun, can I see some ID, please? You see these are the names of the days of the week. After we get all the way through to Saturday, we're gonna jump down to the next row, which is 0 because the very first text area doesn't belong to the year 2018. It belongs to the year 2017, so I zeroed it. 0, can I see some ID, please? January 1st, can I see some ID, please? January 2nd, can I see some ID, please? And you get the gist. I can keep clicking this OK button, and it will give me every single text area for the entire year. Well, of course, I don't want to sit there and do a video of that because that's ridiculous. But I just showed you that by using the alert box, I can see that truly through my loop, I can see how I used this to set the value of my text area's ID. All right, with that being said, I can comment that alert back out because I don't want that pop-up to keep running every time I hit my refresh. The next line of code that executes is this one. On the right hand side of the equal sign, we have document.createText node, opening parenthesis, the name of the array, which is ARR, and then the first index for row and the second index for call. So we're going to create a text node for each. It's kind of like the same thing as the table data cell, but it's going in the TN to represent text node. Now, the table data cell is going to append a child, which is the text node. So we have td.append child. What is it going to append? It's going to append a text node. So that's the first line. The next line, td.append child txa. Well, we want the next text node to be a text area, so I created that is named txa. Then our table row is going to append a child, and the table row is going to append the table data cell. So I guess if we were going to put this in a particular order that might make sense, the table row creates the table data cell creates the text node, which is the text area. Okay. Then I've got a note here that says this location outputs for every text area. So this was another little test that I did to actually watch my code. I wanted to watch my code in action. So again, I've got txa.value equals txa.id, and then alert the txa.value. Let's see what happens when I take the comments off of that. And there you go. The alert is showing you the value, which is also the ID of each text area. I wanted the IDs and the values to match. All right, I don't want to keep going, but you see the gist of that. I don't need these, though. I can comment them out. This was just for probing purposes. Now, we want to look at some conditions. We want to target these text areas and do something with them. We want to target the text areas based on the IDs, and we want to give them a message inside. So the first if condition, you have the if keyword, and then in parentheses you've got the condition or the target, if you will. If txa.id And we want to look for equality, so now we're using the double equal symbol, not the single equals. The single equals is assigning something to something else. This is checking for equality. So if we have a text area that has an ID that is equal to sun, the string sun, then we're going to do something. But we're going to do something to all of these text areas that have names for their value. Week names of the week. So we have if txa.id is equal to sun, and the double pipe symbol means or if txa.id is equal to mun, or if txa.id is equal to tue, or txa.id double equals wed, or txa.id double equals th for Thursday, or txa.id double equals fry, or finally txa.id double equals sat. Don't put a double equals after that because it's going to look for another thing. This is like saying the word or and then putting nothing after the word or. It would look stupid in a sentence. It also looks stupid in code. So you don't put that double pipe there because these are the targets that we are putting in our constraint here, in our condition. So if we've got an ID of sun, mun, tu, wed, th, fi, sat, we are going to do something. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to do it as ever in the following curly braces block. So we're going to say txa, which is short again for the text area, dot disabled equals disabled. These text areas below here with the white backgrounds are not disabled. I can put my insertion point in here and I can type away. I could even type right over top of the things that you're seeing here, and it maintains the color because of the code that I created, but I can type over them so they're not disabled. But up here, sun, mun, tu, wed, th, fri, sat, these text areas that have an image background, you can't click in there and type anything in there. That's what this line of code did. It disabled those text areas because I don't want to use those for text areas. The next thing we did is we had txa.className equals bgimage. So if you remember when I was talking about a style.bgimage, this is giving this text area that class so that it gets this background image. All right. Then I have some commented out code that, again, was for testing purposes. I don't really need to go over this one so much. I could go over this though. Let's say I didn't want to use an image in the text area, just didn't want this rectangle in here at all. I just wanted the abbreviated days of the week. Well, if I use this line of code, txa.style.display equals none, that doesn't hold a space for the rectangle. So let's refresh this and let's refresh this, and you can see how it just gets rid of that text area altogether. You don't see it and there's no space for it. So it just chops it off. Let me comment that back out again so it doesn't execute. Another way to do it, let's bring it back. Another way to do it would be to use this line of code. txa.style.visibility is set equal to hidden. When we do it this way, you won't see the text area, but it will hold the space there as if it were saving its place, if you will. So let's refresh the Notepad++ and refresh the page. And as you can see, you cannot see the text area, cannot see the background image that it holds, but it does not make this shrink. It's keeping it the same size as all the rest of these. It's completely up to you how you want to represent your project. I didn't want to not access it. I wanted to take advantage of giving the text area a background image. So I'm going to keep that. There's the end of the if. So everything in between these curly braces, with the exception of all this stuff that I commented out. So really it's only these two things. If our text area has the ID of any of these, we're going to disable it, and we're going to give it a class that holds a background image and a style. Alright, so there's our first if, our first condition, our first target. Let's go to the next one. Any subsequent, when you have an if, else if statement, the first one uses the keyword if, and all the ones after that, except for the last one, uses the keywords else if. Then when you get to the very, very last possibility, which it would be like a default, you simply use the keyword else. And you'll see when we get to the end. But let's talk about the next target or the next condition that I'm looking for to manipulate. So else if, and in parentheses, this is all the possibilities that we want to manipulate. And all of these, if you can see the pattern, is now we're going to manipulate the first of every month in the year. So else if txa.id double equals Jan 1 in double quotes, there's the or symbol again, to a double pipe, or if the text area ID is February 1, or if the text ID is March 1, April 1, all the way down to December 1. And again, because December 1 is the very last target, don't put the double pipe there, because that's saying or. Okay, so there's our target, the first of every month. What are we going to do if our text area has any of those IDs? We're going to do what's in these curly braces. We're going to take the variable MSG, which is short for message, that we created, and we're going to set it to the value rent. So that's the statement, message equals rent in double quotes, semicolon. After we give this variable a value of rent, we're going to take the text area, again, short txa.value equals message. txa.value means what you see in the text area. That's the value of the text area. Right here you see rent. So message, which we created to be the value of rent, is now going to go, it's going to be assigned to that particular text area's value. So for January 1st, it's going to have rent. February 1st, it's going to say rent. March 1st, for every first of the month. So you see that rent is there. If I go down to the next, rent is here, February 1st. Let's go down. March 1st, here it is. Where's April? April 1st, there it is. So because of this code, all the way down to December 1st, we're going to have the word rent. Not only are we going to have the word rent, we're going to colorize it. So once we give the value of message to rent and then put that into the text area's value, we take txa.style.color equals red to colorize it. We have txa.style.fontweight equals bold to make it thicker. And I experimented with txa.style.font size equals 12 point. I wanted to make it a little bigger. But when you do that, what we get is it's a little bigger, but the text area gets a little bigger. So we don't have consistent sizing of text areas. It looks weird. And if I were to go even larger, let's say we're going to make the message rent 20 point, or it could be pixel. Look how really retarded that looks. And so I decided, no, I'm not gonna utilize that. I'll just comment it out and maybe use it for another time for a different part of my code, so that all of my text areas stay the consistent size across the board. With that being said, I could just really take that line of code off, call it a day. So there's the end if for the first of the month constraint. Let's go down to the next else if and see what the next constraint is that we're going to target. Well, now we're going to target paydays. And starting at the beginning of the year, the first payday, if you get paid twice a month, my first payday and his as well happen to fall on the same day, which is January 12th. Now, I understand that a for loop that is counting each one of these iterations and then change your increment, instead of incrementing by 1, increment by how many days you want. So from the 12th to the 19th is 7 days, and then from the 19th to the 26th is 7 days. So if our increment was 14 days, it would automatically go from January 12th to January 26th. So like that is a more efficient way to code it. But I went this route, which is probably easier to understand because you're seeing it bit by bit. So this is a little bit longer, but you're seeing it bit by bit. So if the txa.id is equal to January 12th, which is the first payday, or if it is January 26th, or if it is February 9th, or now you notice I commented it out by putting 2 forward slashes and it made it blue. The reason I had to comment some of these days is because I've got some bills that are getting paid on the 23rd. Other things are happening on the 23rd. This is where I have to specialize some rules. And again, I'm sure there's more efficient ways of doing this, like maybe nested between for loops and nested if conditions. But this is the easiest way to do it. So I'm looking for easy right now, just to get you through the code in an easy fashion. But because I have to make a specialized rule that incorporates a payday, which has a green background and a black font, with maybe an AEP, because maybe you got to pay your electric bill on the same day that you get your payday. AEP here is a blue font, but if it's put here, it's going to be a black font. So therefore, anywhere that I need to make a specialized rule, a specialized constraint, I took this part out, but I didn't just cut it. I wanted to keep it here as a reminder, so I just commented it out instead of cutting it out. I'm sorry, I commented it out so I still see the date here. So I cut out February 23rd. I'm sorry, I didn't cut it out. I commented it out. I didn't cut it because I want to visualize it. I commented out March 23rd. I commented out June 15th. And I commented out July 27th. I think that's it. All the rest of these, there were no conflicts with the payday and bills. There were no bills that happened to also be on payday, so we just went in line. Now, what are we going to do when we hit all of these paydays? What are we going to do once we target them? We're going to do what's in the following curly brace block. We're going to take the variable MSG, which is short for message, and in our double quotes, we have the word payday. And because I want to go down a line, I don't want to have payday car be all on one line, I use the \n. This is a special escape character that means new line. So it drops down. So this is one statement. Message equals payday, go down to a new line. The next line, we use the variable message, and then we use this symbol plus equals. What that does is it incorporates this, and it appends this to the end. So we have payday, go down a line, car, go down a line. So then the final value for MSG is a 2-line value. It's payday on one line, drop, and car on the next line. That's what the value of MSG is at this point. Then when we take txa.value and we assign message equals message, txa.value equals message. So that 2-line scenario, payday, next line, car, is going to be assigned to the text area's value, which means that's how you see it right here. For January 12th, you see payday, drop, next line, car. After we do that, we want to colorize the background color. So we have txa.style.background color equals light green. And I also wanted it to be bold, so it was a thicker font. And with that, we use this line of code, txa.style.fontweight equals bold. And like I said before, I didn't like how it made my my text area inconsistent, so I'm not going to change that font size. I'm going to just get rid of that. And if. So we just finished that constraint. Let's look at another constraint that we're going to target. Else if what? Well, everything in these parentheses. We are targeting the 8th of the month now. So January all the way to December, we're targeting all of the 8ths of the month. So what are we going to do on the 8th of the month all year long? We're going to do what's in the following curly brace block. We're going to set the variable message to the value of AEP. AEP is going to be inside of the variable MSG. We're going to assign that to the text area's value, TXA value. So now everywhere that the month is the 8th, inside of the text area, it's going to say AEP. We are going to set it to a color, txa.style.color equals blue. We are going to make it a little fatter with txa.style.fontweight equals bold. And we're not going to change the font size. We're not going to do that, so I'm going to take that out. And there's the end of that if condition right there. Let's go to another condition. Else if what? Else if, now we're going to target the 15th of the month, except for June 15th, because we have a conflict there with June 15th. Let's go to June 15th and see why. February, April, May, June 15th, because it's also a payday. So I'm going to comment it out here, but I'm going to make a special exception rule after the fact. So if January, February, March, April, May, not June because we're excluding that, July, August, September, October, November, or December, if we're on the 15th, what are we going to do? We are going to do what's in the curly braces following it. The value of MSG is going to be repair, which is going to go inside of the text area, txa.value equals MSG. We're going to change the color of the font, txa.style.color equals brown, and we're going to make it a little chunkier with txa.style.fontweight equals bold. We are not going to change the font size to 12 points, so I'm going to delete that. Alright, so we've done that, the 15th of every month except for June. And now let's actually handle the June 15th. So here we have another else if condition. Here we're just going to handle the June 15th. Notice we took the June 15th that belongs to repair out of this constraint, and we took the June 15th out of the payday constraint, because we have a payday and a repair that has to be done on payday on June 15th. So June 15th gets its own explicit constraint. Else if txa.id equals June 15th. Okay, so what are we going to do if it's June 15th? We're going to do everything in here. We have MSG getting the value of payday in a new line. We append to that MSG plus equals car in a new line. Then we append to MSG again, MSG plus equals the word repair. So now the value of MSG is a 3-line value. It's going to be payday on the top line, car on the next line, and repair on the third line. So then when we say txa.value equals message, you see June 15th, payday top line, car next line, repair last line. We want to make sure that the color of the font is black, so we have txa.style.color equals black. We want the background to be light green, so we have txa.style.background color equals light green. And we want it to be bold, just like everything else. txa.style.font weight equals bold. So there's the end of that constraint. Let's go to another one. Else if what? Everything in the parentheses. As you can see, we're now targeting the 25th of every month. So on the 25th of every month, we want to put the message insure. Well, it's more like insure, but short for insurance. So the variable MSG will now have the value INSUR. So then everywhere that's the 25th, that text area will get a value of MSG, which is short for insurance. We want to colorize it. txa.style.color equals magenta. We would like to make it fatter, thicker, so we have txa.style.font weight equals bold. We're not going to change the font size. So there's that end. The end, it's actually not the end if, it's the end of the else if. Okay, another else if, yay, another condition. We want to target the 23rd of every month. But we do have a couple of exceptions. We have February 23rd and March 23rd, which are also paydays. So we're going to create an explicit rule, an explicit constraint for the 23rd. So because we're creating an explicit constraint for the 23rd of February and of March, we comment these two out. But for every other month that is the 23rd, we are going to do what? We're going to do what's in the curly braces that follow. The value of MSG is now going to be Netflix. The txa.value is going to be MSG, which is Netflix. txa.style.color is going to be set to orange. txa.style.font weight is set to bold. We are not going to change the font size, so I'll delete that. And then there's the ending curly brace. Now here we're going to create our exception target, else if, and here we want to check or target February 23rd or March 23rd. So if the txa.id is February 23rd or the txa.id equals March 23rd, what are we going to do? We are going to do what's in the curly braces that follow. Again, we have MSG set to payday with a \n, so we go down a line. We append to message car plus a new line. Then we append to message again Netflix. So now the value of message is payday, next line car, next line Netflix. Then we're going to take that value of MSG and we're going to set it to the text area's value. So txa.value equals message. As you can see, payday, car, repair. Oh no, that's for June 15th. We want to look at February 23rd or March 23rd. So let's go up here to February 23rd. Payday, car, Netflix. And let's look at March 23rd. Payday, car, Netflix. All right, so txa.style.background color equals light green, txa.style.color equals black, txa.style.font weight equals bold. End if. What's next? Now we're going to target the 27th of the month. Else if in our parentheses, we are targeting the 27th of every month, except, we've got an exception, July 27th. Why? Let's look at July 27th. Because it's also a payday. No. What am I doing? I'm not even there yet. Yes, because it's a payday. So we're going to give it an explicit rule of payday car and phones in another constraint. Not in this else if, in another one. But we are going to exclude this date by commenting it out. And we're going to include all the other 27ths to be targeted inside of these parentheses. So what are we going to do once we target them? We're going to do this. txa.value equals phones. txa.style.color equals green. txa.style.font weight equals bold. I'm going to delete this. There's the end of that. Here's our exception for the 27th. Else if, in parentheses, txa.id double equals July 27th, JUL, just using the first three characters plus the date. So if it's July 27th, we're going to do this. Message is going to be set to payday with a new line. Message is going to append to that car with a new line. And then message is going to append to that phones. So now again, MSG has a value of 3 different lines: payday, then car, then phones. So then we take that value and we stick it in the text area dot value. So txa.value equals MSG. And that's what we see right here, payday, car, phones. txa.style.background color equals light green. txa.style.color equals black. txa.style.font weight equals bold. That finishes that constraint. Finally, we're at the very last constraint, which is a default. All of the other text areas that we did not target, we want to do something to. What do we want to do? Well, we're saying else, whatever we didn't target, else, we're going to do this. txa.value equals an empty string. And you're going to see the text areas are empty. If I were to say txa.value equals love, save it, and refresh your page, you see love is going to fill up every single text area that we have not previously targeted. That's what the else keyword does. If nothing else has been chosen, we're going to do this. And as cute as an idea that is, it makes the calendar look rather busy, rather full of love, but rather busy. And so we just want to leave the days blank like that. All right. This curly brace ends the inner for loop. And in between the inner for loops curly brace and the outer for loops curly brace, we have this statement right here. It's important that it's placed here and not here and not after the outer for. It has to be in between the two for loops. Tab, which is the variable that's short for table, dot append child. So once the JavaScript creates the table, it needs to create the table row. So tab.append child parentheses tr semicolon. This is where that goes. Again, it goes in between the inner fors closing curly brace and the outer fors curly brace. That's where it belongs. You could try to put it somewhere else and see how your code works, and you'll see that it has to be here. This is just a note that applies to this particular statement that I'm not even using, but it says this location, meaning where it's located in reference to these two for loop closing curly braces. This location outputs the last text area per row. This is showing you where the for loop I can't really describe it. Let's see, if I uncomment this out, let's see what changes with my code here. Let's see if it still changes. Okay, so txa.value equals txa.id. It's giving the ID of the text area. It is putting it inside of the text area. It's giving it, it's putting the ID as the value. So as you can see, now it says January 6th inside of this text area. The ID is now the value. And so this lets me know that in between the inner for loop and the outer for loop, it's only hitting the last column of each row. That's what this particular line of code is doing. Well, I don't want it to do that. This was just showing me where I was in my code, what happens in between the different loops, basically. All right, so again, the only thing that is needed is this line, tab.append child parentheses tr semicolon, in between the two loops. Now, outside of the outer for loop, this curly brace right here, we have to have this. Have to. Body.append child parentheses tab. So, outside of the outer loop, the body that we created in JavaScript is going to append the table. All right. These commented out things are basically practicing how to visualize certain array elements. Okay. This right here, this very first sun with the image, this is the very first element of the array. This one is the next one. This is the next one, and it keeps going until we get to this very last one right here. Well, if you want to just pick a certain one, then you could use the name of the array, and then in the first index you can put, I believe this represents the row, and I believe this represents the column. So just to show you some of these examples, I will uncomment out a bit at a time. I have this particular line of code that uses an alert pop-up, and inside of the parentheses we have the string row1 equals, so you're going to see that particular text in the pop-up. Then we are going to concatenate with the plus symbol the value of array with just index 0. So this is going to show you, what does this mean? What does array index 0 mean? Our alert box is going to show us. So let me refresh this and refresh this. All right. See the words row1 equals? That's what this is. And now we want to know what the value of ARR index 0 is. Well, this is what it is. Sun, mun, tu, wen, third, fry, set. It gives us that whole first row. Now, if you want to pull out something more specific, let's say you want to pull out the 6th index of the first row. Here we're going to use this statement, alert, and in parentheses and double quotes we have the string 6th index of first row equals, then we use the plus symbol to concatenate the value of this. The name of the array is ARR. Now we're using two indexes. The first is the 0 index, which means the first row. The second index means that column. So if I save this, OK out of this, and move up so you can visualize it, This is the array. The whole thing is the array. The first index means this very first row. This 6 means the column. And we start with 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the result should be sat for Saturday. So let's go ahead and refresh it. 6th index of first row equals sat. So ARR index 0, index 6 gives us sat in this particular array. Let me comment that out. Now, let's say you want to pull out the first row, first item. If you want to pull out the first row, first item, you do it like this. Alert, and then just the string, index 0 is the first item of first row, equals, plus the name of the array, which is ARR, index 0, index 0. First one represents the row, second one represents the column. First row, first item, here's the first row, here's the first item. This is represented by ARR, index 0, index 0. So the output should be sun. So let me take that comment off, save it, and refresh. Index 0 is the first item of first row, and it is equal to sun. All right, let's put that comment back on and see what the next possible. What if you just want to alert a whole array? Well, you could start off with message being set to 0, and then you can use that plus equals that we used earlier in the code to append the value of the array to the original blank value. So then when you use your alert in parentheses, you just put the variable MSG. So let me uncomment these out. And actually, I could start off with MSG having a value instead of just being empty. I could say, hi there. Okay. And then we're going to append the value of the whole array to hi there. I suppose it would probably be smart to put a \n, and I could also show you what a tab looks like by putting a \t. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the words hi there. We're going to go down to a new line, and then we're going to tab over just a little bit before we actually throw in the value of the whole array. And so with our alert keyword, we will put in whatever the value of MSG is, which again is going to be hi there, down to the next space, and tabbed over the value of the whole array. So let's see what that looks like. Hi there. This is weird because I've got a scroll here, but I cannot see the value of the whole array. So maybe it was not a good idea to use the \n and the \t. Let's take that off and let's try it again. Hi there, and then right next to it we have the entire array all the way to the end of the year, December 31st, 00000. Alrighty, let's comment that back out. Now, I've shown you how you can pull a row. Let's learn how you can grab a column instead of a row. Remember, indices for columns or rows always start with 0. So we have two statements here. The first statement is this long one right here. var, so we're creating a new variable. Whenever you create a brand new variable in your code that you never created before, you have to use the var keyword. Var get column2 equals, and this is a little bit more sophisticated. This is the first time I've ever used this particular code. I found it online and I decided to save it in case I want to use it for something more important later, but we use the name of the array, ARR, then dot map, open up a parenthesis, then use the keyword function, which has two parameters. Inside the parentheses we have value, comma, index, and then in the meat of the curly braces here, in the functions block, we have the return keyword, followed by the word value, index 2. End that with a semicolon, close the curly brace to close the block of this function, close the parenthesis, which belongs to, if I just highlight it, it belongs to this whole thing called array.map, and then a final semicolon to finalize the entire statement. So that's kind of a long, more sophisticated statement. And after we do that, we use our alert keyword, and in parentheses we have the string column2 equals, we use the plus to concatenate the value of the variable we just created, get column2. The value of this is based on the right hand side of this single equals assignment symbol. Whatever it does on the right hand side gets assigned to the variable on the left. So let's see how this works. Let's save it in Notepad++ and refresh it. Column2 equals, we start off with the name TUE for Tuesday. Then we have January 2nd, January 9th, January 16th, January 23rd, all the way to December 25th and 0. So if I go to Tuesday, which is right here, you see January 2, January 9, January 16, all the way to December 25th and 0. So we got the values of the entire Tuesdays, the dates, the whole year's worth of dates for Tuesdays. Alright, big deal, I know, but sometime you might want to actually utilize something like that for your code. Let's go on ahead and comment those out. Here we've got the statement alert, and in parentheses we use the name of the array, which is ARR.length. So now we're going to find out what is the value of the array's length. And then we're going to use the plus symbol to concatenate this big long string of words. Is the number of rows in the array, \n goes down to the next line where we will say it spans columns 0 to 6. So let's run that and see what that alert box looks like. 54 is the number of rows in the array, ... Next line, it spans columns 0 through 6. Okay, so that's just basically showing you what r.length does. And let's comment that out. Okay, let's see, some more experimenting. TXAID equals. So we created this variable earlier, but we never used it. Now we're going to use it and see the result. So on the right hand side of the single equals assignment, we have document.getElements by tag name, parentheses and single quotes, text area.length. So we want to, I guess we want to take the length of all the text areas and put it in this variable called TXAID. Then we're going to use our alert pop-up to say text area length is, and then we're going to concatenate with the plus symbol, whatever the value of TXAID is. Which that's kind of a strange variable name for this particular execution, but you could change this name to anything you want. Text area length is 378. we have 378 text areas in this array. All right, here's a few things that I really don't know what I'm using them for. I just seen this stuff online and I wanted to keep them for future reference. Alert document.doctype. It is showing you object document type. The next one is alert document.body. Let's see what that looks like. Object HTML body element. Okay. Let's do this one. Alert parenthesis r index 0 dot ID. What will this do? This just tells us undefined. And actually I have a note underneath it that says that this output's undefined. What if we do this? Alert parentheses r index 2 index 2. This is row 2. It's not actually row 2, it's the index because the first row is index 0. So this is actually showing us the third row, third position. So if we start here at the top, 1, 2, third row, 1, 2, third position, it should give us January 9th. And really, I shouldn't even say 1, 2, 3. I should say 0, 1, 2 because that's how the indexes start. So again, for the row, this would be index 0, this would be index 1, this would be index 2 for the row, which is this first one. And for the column, this would be index 0 column, this would be index 1 column, this would be index 2 column. So our index 2 will give us January 9th. So let's go on ahead and refresh this, and indeed you see January 9th is the output. Okay. Let's see what alert parentheses the name of the whole array, which is just ARR. Alert ARR. And here you got it. You got every single array element, starting with Sunday to Saturday, the 0, and then January 1st all the way to December 31st, 00000. And what happens if you do this? Alert parentheses r index 2. What you get is that row. Not the first row because that's 0. Not the second row because that's 1. But the next row, January 7th, January 8th, all the way to January 13th. Okay, that was that one. And this is another practice for getting the column. That's that more sophisticated line of code, where on the right hand side it does all this. It uses r.map, parentheses function, parentheses value, comma index, and in the meat of the curly braces, return value index 5, semicolon, closing curly, closing parenthesis, closing semicolon. All of this on the right hand side of the equals gets put into this. Then when we use the alert, we alert the string column 5 equals plus the value of get column 5. Let's run it and see the output. Column 5 equals Friday, January 5th, January 12th, January 19th, January 26th, February 2nd, February 9th. So starting with Friday, all the way to the last text area's value on a Friday, December 28th, and then 0. So let's look at Friday. Friday starts here, and if we take it all the way down to the bottom, you see December 28th, and the very final one has the value of 0. Alright, so if you want to do anything with that part of your calendar, you could do that to access it. Okay, some conditionals. These test all conditions for truth. It's basically what if conditions do. So let's take this multi-line comment out. It starts there and ends there. If this condition is true, then we are going to alert this. If this condition is true, we are going to alert this. If this, or, there's our pipes, double pipes, or this, or this, or this. That means if any of these are true, then we're going to do this. If none of them are true, we go to the else, and we will alert this. So let's see what happens when none of those if conditions are commented out. Let's see what happens. Yes, sun. So if array 0, 0 is equal to sun, then alert will be yes plus the value of array 0, 0. So it is in fact sun, because that alert says yes, sun. Next if arrays index 0, index 1 is equal to mon, if that's true, then we will get the alert yes plus the value of array index 0, index 1. So it must be true because we get yes, mon. Click OK. We have U matched 0 values. So at least one of these has to be true. If array 1, 0 is equal to 0, or array 5, 4 is equal to 0, or array 5, 5 is equal to 0, or array 5, 6 is equal to 0. If any of those are equal to 0, then we will get the alert that says you match 0 values. Well, if you're wondering what that's all about, it's about this 0 value. This is array 1, 0. This place right here, this placement, this is array 1, 0. Okay. And it is equal to 0. That's what I set its value to. Its ID is set to that. Where is array 5, 4? Let's start with the 5 represents the row. We start with 0. So this would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're in this row, and we want the 4th column starting with 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try that again. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. This array 5, 4 is not equal to 0. It's equal to February 1st. And it has a value of rent. So this part is not true. This part was true. This part is not true. Let's see if 5, 5 is equal to 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the row, and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the column. This is February 2. This does not have the value of 0, so this is also false. This is also false. What about this one? R5, 6. Well, that's the next one over. We're still in the 5th row, but we're over 1. So that's talking about this one. This one is also not 0. So only this is true. This is false, this is false, and this is false. Let's make them all false. Let's make the first one not equal to 0. Let's make it equal to 10, which means that now none of these possibilities are true. And when none of them are true in the condition, then the following curly braces gets ignored, and we will go down to the else. So now that I've made all of the possible conditions in the parentheses false, let's save this. We should get alert, shitballs, no match. So let's see what happens. First we have yes, sun, because it's starting all over up here. It's starting from this if, okay? Hit OK. Yes, mun. This is also true. So we get yes, mun. Now we're down here testing these things that none of them are true. So what we should get is this shitballs, no match. Shitballs, no match. Okay, so that's the end of the function, the entire function. There's the ending of the script tag and the ending of the head. Now, like I did with the style CSS, I'm going to make it external JavaScript, and I'm going to save it as action.js. Save. So now we have this empty file called action.js. I'm going to go back to my HTML, and I want everything from 440 up to where all the JavaScript began. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. We're almost done because this is the creation of the array. Oh, come on, let's do it. Alright, there's the opening script tag. So it's all highlighted. Right click, cut it, go into action.js, right click and paste it. And just like our style, we can get rid of the tag. The opening script tag we get rid of, go all the way to the bottom. The closing script tag we get rid of. So now all we have is the JavaScript in a file all by itself called action.js. Alright, and that is what this is going to point to. This link, script language equals JavaScript, source equals action.js, ending script tag. So this should still work, even though I cut it out of the HTML, it's still going to work. It still shows everything that we went over. Nothing has changed. And I don't really, that whole shitballs thing, I don't need to keep that. So all this extra conditional experimentation I can comment out by using the multi-line comment of / asterisk at the beginning of it, then all the way to the end of it, asterisk / So we don't want to comment out this ending function curly brace. That definitely belongs to the code. Just all that junk in the middle that I was experimenting with. Okay, let's refresh this. So now we just have everything. You know, the rent is red, and it's the first of every month. So here's January 1st, February 1st, March 1st, April 1st, May 1st, June 1st, July 1st, August 1st, September 1st, October 1st, November 1st, and December 1st. And all the rest of the bills work the same. And again, for the bills that happen to show up on a payday, let's look for those. Not so far, they're not. Right here, February 23rd, we had to make sure Netflix shows up on payday. Let's go further down. It also did it on March 23rd. On June 15th, repair bill was also due on payday. On July 27th, the phones bill was also due on payday. And is that it? And that's it. Everything else should show up. The repair bill is on the 15th of every month. There's December 15th, November 15th, and so on and so forth. I don't want to keep talking about it over and over because my code is fine. Everything is working fine. And that's it in a nutshell. The next step that I will do, well, actually, I need to finish off this code. I'm sorry. I created the external CSS and the external JS files. Here's the ending head tag, and for the body of the HTML, all we do is call the doozer function that is in our external JavaScript now. So body on load equals doozer, and it's a function, so we have it that we have empty parentheses, and all of that is in double quotes. And there's the ending body tag and the ending HTML. So as you can see, no HTML elements are created in the HTML file. All the stuff that you see right here in this web page has been completely designed by JavaScript. So if a user has their browser with JavaScript turned off, you're not going to see anything. I mean, none of this. You're not going to see the calendar at all. So JavaScript is mandatory for this program to run. With that being said, what I would like to add to this project is local storage. Otherwise, why do I have all these text areas that I want to type in? I want to be able to save stuff. So that will be what I add to the next video as far as this project is concerned. But for now, I'm done.